Hey guys, Stephen Bogan here from Pro Physique. Today what I want to talk about is meal timing. I'm not wearing a watch. So hey guys, I put it out there on my Instagram story the other day and I kind of asked for some questions and video topic ideas. And so my wonderful clients and athletes shot me some ideas, and this is one of the ones I liked the most. I thought it was probably like really easy in general for me to talk about, and something that I think a lot of people just sort of miss, and that is meal timing. So I think that it makes the most sense for me to talk about meal timing and how I would prioritize them and how I consider them to be the most important, right? So I think let's start with, what is the idea? What a lot of people are doing is to eat a lot of small meals throughout the day, okay? Trying to like boost the metabolism. So that's not how that works. It doesn't boost the metabolism. The way that you like get your metabolism up is by adding lean body mass, right? So we'll say that in and of itself, and we'll actually say that it's probably less optimal than having maybe 4 to 5 meals throughout the day, and spacing things out properly. The big reason why I'm going to say is for the protein refractory period. So what is the refractory period, Stephen? Well, I've talked about this before, but let's go over it. It is essentially the idea that when we eat protein is made up of amino acids, right? So protein goes into our belly where it releases joy and happiness, and then goes into our gastrointestinal or our GI tract, gets broken down into its components that are amino acids. Those amino acids then get taken into the bloodstream. So when the amino acids are in the bloodstream and there's enough, and it's normally triggered by leucine, so there's enough leucine, we see that muscle protein synthesis, or the building of new muscle, is activated. So what we see now is that the amino acid levels in the blood have to come down to a certain baseline point again before we can stimulate or activate muscle protein synthesis another time. So if we eat within too short of a time frame, we are no longer reactivating that. And they know this because what they did is they IV'd amino acids straight into someone and just kept blood amino acid levels high. And what they saw was muscle protein synthesis spiked, still comes back down. So my recommendation on protein timing is really 4 to 6 hours in between meals. What that means is we can have a simple breakfast, lunch, and dinner and still be really good. I personally like to still do a breakfast, lunch, and dinner and then a post-workout. I tend to be up long enough, and I would say that even if you have to go on the short end, have at least 3 hours between your protein feedings, right? So that's how I like to set up protein timing and protein meals. So if you're eating protein every 2 hours, you're doing too much. And at that point, your protein intake has to either be extremely, extremely high to have the leucine content that we need to reach leucine threshold, or we're just not getting enough protein in general to even hit that leucine threshold to stimulate. Because remember, we have to have a certain amount of protein. The more lean body mass you have, the higher that protein threshold is going to need to be. So, protein covered. Let's talk about carbs. Carbs is my favorite. So, carbohydrates are a big one, and there are a lot of questions about carbohydrates, but we're just going to talk about timing today and try and keep it a little bit more on the simpler side. So, let's talk about carbohydrate timing. There are really 2 main times that I think carbohydrates are the most important. That is going to be pre-workout and post-workout. Why? Okay, so now if we look at glycogen stores and some of the research, we can say, and performance, we can say that there might not be a huge impact of pre-workout carbs. That is if we're in a surplus, if glycogen stores are already saturated and we're still feeling good. Now, for those of you that have been dieting like me, you know that having pre-workout carbs can make a very big difference in terms of how you feel during your workouts. So I always recommend a pretty reasonably large dose of your carbohydrates pre-workout. Here's the question that everybody asks me. Stephen, how long before my workout do I need to have that carbohydrate meal? This question is, well, it depends, right? So now, if I'm having a more complex carbohydrate source, right? Something that takes a little bit longer to digest, maybe like an oatmeal or a sweet potato kind of idea, I'm going to have that further out from my workout. Maybe an hour and a half or so, right? Something so that it has time to digest, it's not sitting in my stomach, it's not bothering me, like I'm not having GI distress from it, those kinds of things. Now, if I'm strapped for time, I forgot to eat, I'm going to have a more simple carb source. I'm going to have like a Pop-Tart or something sugary snack, something that's going to go in. It's not going to take up a lot of volume in my stomach, so it's not going to make me uncomfortable. It's going to digest very quickly, and it's going to be readily available for use. There have been times when I legitimately eat a Pop-Tart, down my pre-workout, and then go to the gym, and I'm starting to warm up and get going, 15 to 20 minutes later. So when we talk about carbohydrate sources, pre-workout, it all depends on what kind of carbohydrates you're getting. Are you getting simple carbs? Are you getting complex carbs, right? And then how long you have, right? So your meal timing for carbohydrates should depend on those factors. Now, what about post-workout? Ooh, this is a fun one. So post-workout, I think a lot of people are used to now is when we take the simple carbs, right? Because simple carbs do what? They go straight to the bloodstream, they raise blood glucose, and insulin is activated. So I don't have any problem with that. Simple carbs post-workout are absolutely fine. However, I would like to challenge you with the thought that complex carbohydrates post-workout might also be a good option. There was a study done by EAS Myoplex back in the day that actually showed that complex carbs may in fact be more anabolic. Oh, there's your trigger word. They might be more anabolic than those simple carbohydrate sources. Now, for me, I see this as saying, okay, so we know that simple carbohydrates have a spike in insulin because quick, right? But then insulin stores it all in the muscle and it kind of also comes down quick. So when we see a more complex carbohydrate source, insulin response is definitely not as quick, but it's over a longer period of time. So I think for me, it depends where you're at in your diet, how many calories you're eating, when you're training during the day, do you need the energy, and sort of those other factors. So I would say carbohydrate timing in that aspect, again, it depends. However, don't feel like you have to have fruit or you have to have cereal or something sugary. You can just as easily do those more complex carbohydrate sources and still be just fine. You're not going to sacrifice any kind of anabolic gains. Okay, so what about the last one? Fat, right? Fats are one of those things that I say, just spread it out evenly throughout the day. You need fats for your fat-soluble vitamins, you need fats for hormones, and for digestion. So what I always tell everybody is try to spread your fats out evenly throughout your meals, and maybe just to be on the safer side, keep them lower on those pre and post workout meals. So hopefully that helps everyone. Hopefully that talks a little about that digestion life, that meal timing life when you forget your watch. And just helps you to better set up how your days are structured with your meals and your meal timing. But I'll leave it there, guys. I'll talk to you again soon. So until then.